Now we have our distinguished guest of today, Jaggi Vasudev Adarni Sadguruji. All of you are requested to stand up.
सद्गुरु जी स्वीकार करे शुभ अभिनंदन। सद्गुरु जी स्वीकार करे शुभ अभिनंदन। आज मगन है धरा और ये नील गगन, मगन है नील गगन। खुशियों की खुशबू से भीगी पवन पवन, खुशियों की खुशबू से भीगी पवन पवन। आप पधारे धन्य हो गया ये आंगन, धन्य है ये आंगन। निसा सा निसा सा धानी दीदी धानी दीदी पदा दा पदा दा गमा पानी धा पा मा पा। निसा सा धानी दी पदा दा मा पा पा गमा पानी धा पा मा पा। प्रेम एकता सदाचार हो सबके लिए शुभकामना। आओ मिलकर नदियां बचाएं दिल में रख सद्भावना। इसलिए तो हुआ यहाँ पर महामिलन। आप पधारे धन्य हो गया ये आंगन, धन्य है ये आंगन। सद्गुरु जी स्वीकार करे शुभ अभिनंदन। सद्गुरु जी स्वीकार करे शुभ अभिनंदन। आज मगन है धरा और ये नील गगन, मगन है नील गगन। नील गगन 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 नील गगन। मगन है नील गगन, धन्य है ये उपवन, मगन है नील गगन, धन्य है ये उपवन, धन्य है ये उपवन।
Thank you so much for that beautiful song. I request everyone to settle down. Your Excellency, Sadhguruji, Chairman Sir, Vice Chairman Ma'am, and all the distinguished guests present today, we welcome you all to this extraordinary event. As you all know, that today we have gathered for a noble cause, which is Rally for Rivers, a nationwide campaign which has been launched by Adarni Sadhguruji, which is covering up 16 states, 30 events and 8,000 kilometers. A really applaudable initiative taken by Isha Foundation. And now we will request our MD ma'am to facilitate the questions from the students.
Namaskaram, everyone. This is not a classroom, you don't have to necessarily sit in the back seat. Hello, you can come forward. Okay, those are the boys who are brave and girls who are beautiful can come forward. You still don't move? I said the brave and the beautiful can come and occupy the front seats. Wherever I travel in the world, I'm not used to speaking to empty chairs, that's why I'm telling you, please.
Please come forward. आप लोग वहीं पे रहेंगे।
Okay, namaskar. So the Rally for Rivers, what is the basic purpose and why this started? My involvement with the rivers, forests and mountains in this country started very early on. When I say early, when I was 9–10 years of age, if I got my hands on 10 rupees, I would be gone in the jungle for 4 to 5 days. When I ran out of bread, I came back home. But otherwise I got lost in the jungles. So my experience of forests and rivers, as I did not see them as a natural resource, nor did I see them as some kind of natural beauty, but I experienced jungles and river as a life larger than myself. People like you and me come and go, but the rivers have been flowing for millions of years. So from the age of 12 to 17, I swam in Kaveri. This girl was dressed as Kaveri, where's she gone? Every day, almost every day, I swam in Kaveri. When I was over 17, I rafted down Kaveri from Bhagamandala to Mysore on just 4 truck tubes and a few bamboos. 13 days, 163 kilometers, I lived off the river. So my experience of the river was so huge, it's a life much, much larger than you and me, sustains millions of life forms, and it's impossible to put it into words what a river is as a living thing. It is a life beyond you and me, it will live beyond you and me. But such a mighty life, we brought it down to its knees now. Kaveri has become seasonal. For 3.5 months it does not touch the ocean. This year, in summer, Kaveri stopped short of the ocean, 170 kilometers short. The entire length of Kaveri in Tamil Nadu is only 430 kilometers. In that 170 kilometers short, it dried up. Krishna sometimes has not seen the ocean for as long as 3 years, it's not touched. Narmada, a mighty river like Narmada, doesn't touch the ocean for 2.5 to 3 months. This is happening across the country, particularly in the last 7–8 years' time. The drop in the river flows is so steep and alarming. So alarming that if you allow this to go as it is going right now, in the next 15 years' time, almost over 70% of our rivers will be seasonal. What this means is the enormous biodiversity that these rivers support will be gone and for good. This is a land where the level of biodiversity in the country is so high, it is the highest in the world. For this small piece of land, which is Indian subcontinent, which is only actually 4% of the landmass in the world, has biodiversity in a way that it could support almost 50% of the land on the planet. That is the level of biodiversity we have. Over 1,000 species of fish in the freshwaters of India. But in the last 25 years, scientists estimate, because there is no study as such, they believe that anywhere between 15 to 25% of them may be gone because when the rivers became seasonal, that part of the biodiversity may be totally gone and many of them may not recover at all. That means they've gone extinct. So what if a few fish die, still there are other fish to eat? But when fish, insect, worms, birds start dying, we must know next is you and me. So it is not too far away. So this has been on my mind for some time and we've been looking at how to get this off the ground and make sure that there is a national policy that we treat our soil and rivers as national treasure, not by everyone's whim. When I say everyone's whim, particularly one disturbing factor that happened in the last couple of years is certain NGOs and certain people with good intentions, of course, they started digging up the rivers to facilitate water to percolate and go to the farmers' wells. They dug up the rivers 4 feet deep, miles on end, with machines. Riverbed is a very complex and dynamic space. There is so much happening there and it takes 1,000 years to build a riverbed. This is why people are protesting against sand mining, not because somebody takes a little bit of sand, because riverbed is a very complex assembly of things where so much is happening there. If you destroy that, you can't build it back in 1,000 years. But people who call themselves environmentalists, people who call themselves they're concerned about these things, they are digging up the rivers. This is when I started thinking there has to be a national policy as to how we treat our rivers. Every one of us can't do our own thing, this is not private property. This is nation's treasure. With the kind of population that we have, the kind of water crisis that we are driving ourselves into is disastrous. When I say disastrous, many of you may not know you're living in cities and if you turn the tap, water comes, so you think water comes from the tap. This is something that I must tell you. We made some kind of a loose survey and we found below 20 years of age, over 80% of the young people have never seen a river in their life. Of course, they've seen online rivers, but offline, the real rivers, 80% of them have not seen a river in their life. So I thought it's time everybody hears the word river and sees a river. Right now, there is a process that we have started. Every one of you should take a selfie with a river and say what is the condition of the river that you're seeing, because we want this to happen in a huge way, that every small rivulet in the country gets pictured and your observation, it may not be scientific, you may not be a scientist, it doesn't matter, but your visual observation of how the river is. Because if we don't have any feeling or thought about something, we are not going to protect that. So the river policy is essentially an economic policy with a significant ecological impact. I will not go into the complexities of the policy, but essentially we must understand there are two types of rivers. One type of river is something that is glacier-fed or ice-fed rivers. The rest of the rivers are forest-fed rivers. In our country, fortunately, only 4% of the river water is glacier-fed. Why I am saying fortunately is, we cannot determine how much snowfall should happen. That's a global situation. That's not something that we can fix. But 96% of the water coming from forest-fed rivers, this is something we can fix. If we are determined to do this, we can do this. What a forest-fed river means is, in this country, we get an average precipitation or rain only for 40 to 45 days. Only during the monsoons it just pours down. So this 45 days of rain, we are supposed to hold it in the land and let it go slowly into the river for 365 days. That's what nature has been doing for a long time. But now the depletion of green cover is such that whatever comes down goes out in a flood. So you are seeing across the country cycles of floods and droughts happening. Every other day you're hearing in the news, one news is saying there is a flood, another news is talking about there is a drought. This cycle of flood and drought is simply because we are not able to hold the water in the land. There is a very beautiful saying in Tamil language, this is said hundreds of years ago, this is the wisdom of the past. They said, Kaveri should come walking, she should not run. If she runs, there will be destruction. If we have to make her walk, there must be substantial vegetation, only then she will walk. If you take away all the vegetation, it will run away. You are in the Ganga basin in a way. This is the large river basin in the country. It covers nearly 25% of India's geography. 33% of India's agriculture happens in this Ganga belt. But 94% of green cover has been removed in the last 100 years. 94%. Is our plan for this country, I want to know. We are planning for a disaster. 94% green cover if you remove. Aren't we planning for a disaster? We are planning for this, driving into a disaster. 44% drop in river water has happened in Ganga. Out of the 800 tributaries that Ganga has, 470 of them don't run for more than 4 months right now. When I was 19 years of age, I came to Himalayas to trek and one of my thing was I wanted to meet Sundarlal Bahuguna. You heard of him? The younger people, Sundarlal Bahuguna? The chip moment. So, I wanted to meet him, I never got around to see him, I happened to get to see his wife. And I sat with her on the riverbank talking for some time. He tried to put back the trees. Indian Railways was built off the Himalayan forests. We took down millions and millions of trees and we made railways out of it. After 30 years, we realized to make railway sleepers with concrete. If somebody had used their brains a little bit, they could have realized this 30 years ago and not taken down all these trees. Because of taking down these trees, those millions of trees in the Himalayan ranges, today over 470 of the 800 tributaries to Ganga are going dry after 4 months of run. So, I can throw so many disaster statistics, but that's not the point. The point is, we are at a threshold where if we take the right kind of action in the next 15 to 25 years, we can see rise in river water flows across the country. So this is why Rally for Rivers, the policy is about this. We want a national policy which is implementable and enforceable. I don't know if I can say this in UP because I've been having some experience. Normally, if you drive on the wrong side of the road, within minutes you get picked up. Maybe you've been exempted. Because I'm seeing very happily people are coming in the opposite direction. But normally, okay, that happens. So similarly it should be, if you do not do the right things with the river, there must be a penalty for you, right there. Otherwise this is not going to work. So the policy is directed towards this, that a mandatory, enforceable and implementable policy across the country, that the scientific basis of how we should treat a river for it to sustain itself should be the way, not our own emotional and political ways of dealing with the rivers. This is what the policy is about. If you have questions, any kind of question, please.
Here, Sir, good afternoon. Namaskaram. My question is, we are having this rally. So, in how many years are we expecting, and what percentage of water flow to come into all these dry rivers? What is the time period we are targeting at?
Okay. Now, approximately, the major rivers in India run for about 20,000 kilometers. Of these 20,000 kilometers of the river run, fortunately, 25% of the land is held in the hands of the government. This we want to ensure turns into forests. Here there is no limit of 1 kilometer, all this. Maximum amount of land, except what the government plans for development, maybe 2 or 3% of the land, rest of it should become forest. We are determined about this. I'm quite sure it will happen. How quickly is a question mark, but I believe in 3 to 8 years' time, all plantations should be done. For them to grow, give another 6 to 8 years' time, so 15 years approximately. But the remaining 75% is in the farmer's hands. Of this, 6 to 8% are delta lands. Leave the delta lands, we don't have to touch that. So 65% of the land approximately, amounting to about 14,000 kilometers. If we say on either side 1 kilometer of the river, this amounts to 28,000 square kilometers. This we want to convert into tree-based agriculture. From crop-based agriculture to tree-based agriculture. For this to happen… Okay. I thought somebody doesn't like what I'm saying. If this has to happen, we have to set up economic modules which are successful. We have already done this in Tamil Nadu on small scale. But now we want to set up large-scale modules, that's why we are signing MOUs with all the state governments. When I say large scale, we are talking about 50 to 100 kilometer lengths on both sides of the river. We want to set up tree-based agriculture and show the farmer that actually his income can multiply 3 to 8 times by shifting from crop-based to tree-based agriculture. We had a few Vietnamese experts with us as a part of this rally, and we were talking to them and they said, in their country, shifting from paddy cultivation to tree-based agriculture of fruits, the farmer's income went up 20 times over, 2,000%. That was amazing. We said, how is that possible? And they are laughing at us. You know why? Because 22 years ago, that team came to India and studied in the Indian universities for 5 years. They went back and made it a practical solution in their country. They said, we made it work in our country, but you got PhDs. So, this is not rocket science, we know what to do, everybody knows what to do, but it's not happening on the land. We are still irrigating the lands as we did. We have a huge history of agriculture. This is the only nation on the planet which has a history of 8 to 12,000 years of agriculture, particularly down south, 12,000 years of agricultural history. When nobody knew what is agriculture on the planet, we had organized agricultural process. But now, what we were doing 1,000 years ago, we're still doing the same thing without changing our ways of doing things. So, the science of it, the technology of it, the irrigation technologies that are available, we are not using it. The agriculture in India is using up 84% of the water in the rivers, 84%. If we look at many other nations who are doing similar crops as we are doing, with much better yields, they are using 10 to 20% of the water that we use for the same crop, and they are having better yields. So if we bring in the right kind of technologies, this is not some great technology, this is just micro-irrigation technologies if you bring in, and create the necessary humus on the land, then if your consumption comes down to, let's say, 25 to 30% of what you're doing, that itself will make the river flow. So, we are having a large-scale effort with the governments, we are signing MOUs with the state governments. The best thing that has happened since we started the rally is… See, the biggest challenge in this process was, river is a concurrent subject between the center and the state. That means nobody can decide by themselves. Both have to come together. India being a multi-party democracy and there are so many parties ruling different states, they never came to concurrence. When I was in Puducherry, or Pondicherry as you may know it, the chief minister was saying, Sadhguru, in 24 years ago when I was in Rajiv Gandhi's cabinet, our experts drew up policy which is very similar to what you're speaking today. We tried our best, we tried very hard, but we could not get concurrence from the states. So this has been the main hurdle for many years. But now fortunately, all the states have concurred. Across political parties, every one of them is speaking in one voice for the Rally for Rivers. Till now we have passed through 10 states, ruled by 6 different parties. All of them are speaking in one voice. So this major hurdle we have crossed. Many of the states are going ahead implementing this process. Whatever the rally recommendations are there, they are beginning to implement it already. They have allotted budgets for the same without waiting for the center to pass the law, because the state has the freedom to do it. Without even getting directions from the center, they have already allotted budgets of their own to implement the policy. That is a big plus. So, if you ask me, how long does it take? I know many of you may be online warriors. The many online warriors, they make a call and they look, oh, the river has not come up yet. It doesn't work like that. If we do the right things for the next 10 to 15 years in a concerted way, then in the next 20 to 25 years, we will have an increase of anywhere between 15 to 20% of the river flows. That's how much time it will take. So 20 to 25 years means 4 to 5 governments by natural process of democratic process. By natural democratic process, 4 to 5 governments would have come and gone. We don't know which party will be ruling, who will be ruling after 20 years. But if we want to keep all of them focused on one policy that we have made today, it is important that the citizens of India give out one big yes, a resounding yes to the river policy, so big a number that political parties which depend on people's vote will not forget it if a huge number of people do this. I'm asking for a minimum of 30 crore, but young people should not stop at 30 crore. Why I'm saying 30 crore is, this is 40% of the electorate. Normally that's how much it takes to win election. But why should you stop at 40%? Because all of us are water-drinking species, are we? Hello? Yes. So everybody who consumes water must rally for rivers. This is our moment in this nation's history. That right now, if we do the right things, India will move in one direction. If we don't do the right things, India will start moving in another direction. I want you to know one alarming statistic. In the last 8 years, India has started importing 17% of its food grains, which never happened in the past. Okay? I want you to know this, young people who might not have heard about it unless you read some history, maybe it's not in your memory at all, is just 60 years ago, if you look back beyond 60 years, every third year we had famines in this country. Do you know what's the kind of number that perished in these famines? You think it's dozens? Hundreds? Thousands? It was in millions. 1943 Bengal famine killed 3.5 million people in 2.5 months. This is not a nuclear bomb or something. Quietly sitting and dying out of hunger. I want you to understand what this means for people to die like this. But Indians die quietly, that's the whole thing about them. They think it's their karma and they just die without complaining about it. But we should not forget this. And this has happened every second, third year we've seen famines. It's only in the last 60 years there has not been… There have been bad agricultural years, but never a famine in the last 60 years. We should never have one in the next 500 years. That's what we should aim at. For this, the most important thing is our soil and our water is this responsibility of this generation, and we have to fulfill that.
Good afternoon, Sadhguruji. I wanted to ask you that every revolution is part of a particular incident. So I wanted to know, in your case, what was that particular incident that motivated you to launch such a big noble cause, Rally for Rivers?
This is not a revolution, so it was not triggered by a particular incident. It is just that I enjoyed the rivers in their very glorious form. 50 years ago, how I saw the rivers. You have not seen such rivers because they have depleted over 40 to 60%. Narmada has depleted over 60%. So it's my wish, my dream and my blessing that in another 25 years, all of you should experience the rivers as I did 50 years ago. Is this a bad dream? Oh. Okay? So, this is not a knee-jerk reaction to some incident. This is something that's been evolving within me for a long time because I've been watching with concern that year after year, there's not up and down. Steadily, year after year in the last 25 years, rivers are depleting. How can we just ignore something so vital to our lives? I cannot understand how we can just ignore this and go on. We have to take the needed action now. As I was telling you about the Chief Minister saying, 25 years ago they wanted to do it and they did not do. I also told him, 25 years ago if you had taken action, we could have completed this with 10% of the effort that is needed today. But if we don't do anything now and let's say after 25 years when things are really bad we try to take action, it will take 100 to 150 years to turn this around. This is not alarmist talk. This is proper science, you can look it up.
Could we have the mic there? Could we send the mic?
We have so many benefits here. What is your message? What we should do individually for this project?
Individually, what you should do, there are three things you can do right now. Before I go into these three things, I must tell you, when we talk about these kind of issues, the general tendency is to become emotional and say, okay, I'm going to go and plant a tree, I'm going to do this. No, you don't plant a tree today. So this is not something that we can either approach emotionally or for political reasons. There must be proper scientific basis to this and this must be approached in a strategic way. So right now the strategy is just this. The three things you must do is, you must give a missed call. Have you?
Yes.
You must give a missed call. And you must make sure everybody that you know, your family and friends and everybody you know must give a missed call. And you must make sure all the strangers that you do not know on the street, that they give a missed call. These are only three things you have to do right now. Because we want an overwhelming yes from the country so that government will feel confident. Why I am saying this is, this involves huge financial outlays and a long gestation period. This is not an election-winning policy. No political party will be interested in doing it unless people give one big yes and they understand this is what the nation wants. And above all, we have to keep them focused for next 25 years in the same direction. For this, you and me are responsible, we must make this happen. I am doing my little rally, you do yours, in whichever way. The boys and girls, you walk for rivers, you ride for rivers, you drive for rivers, you get around your train for rivers, do whatever the hell you want, but rally for rivers and make sure the nation responds in a huge way. This is a This is a generation and this is a time in our life where we have a tremendous amount of communication capabilities and technologies. Use everything that you have and make sure the nation rallies for rivers, because this is our moment in history. Thank you very much.
So, we'll all give a standing ovation